Hello, folks. So today I am Dr. Carla Engelbrecht. We are going to talk through Google Flow and specifically with an eye toward creating kids videos that are not slop. If you have seen any of my stuff, you know I'm very much on the anti-slop pro AI space, though that's not without reservations, which we'll talk about a little bit. But we'll dive in. You are welcome to kind of play along at home if you have access already to Google Flow. Otherwise, I will get into it and show you. I'm going to talk through some basics first, and then we'll dive into the tool to really look at it in real time. So my slides go forward. Cool. So just a little bit about me. So I am a longtime tech creator working in technology and education and entertainment. I have an old English bulldog named Lily, who you may hear barking, though I have tamed her for the moment with a delicious treat. I'm also the mom of a teenage girl, who thankfully is out of the house right now and will not be crashing in the middle of this. But we do all sorts of fun, entertaining, and interesting things, and also teenage parenting. It's a thing. I mentioned, so I have created more than 200, probably more than 300 at this point. I kind of lost track somewhere along the way. All sorts of interactive education, entertainment experiences, Netflix, Sesame Street, PBS Kids, highlights for children, all sorts of really fun places. I'm best known for creating Netflix interactive, so Black Mirror Bandersnatch, You versus Wild, Puss in Book. I spend a lot of time really thinking about the intersection of content and storytelling and how tech can enable bigger, better, greater stories. It's part of why I'm really fascinated by AI, and also it's really challenging. So I use AI in all sorts of situations, some successfully, some not so much, but I use it for content production, for written work, for prototypes and product development. I have built automated production pipelines. I use it for all sorts of life and business operations, staying on top of my calendar, my expenses, and I also use it for a lot of research and learning. The some of the content I've created, so I have more than 100 pieces that I've created. Some of them have done fantastically well, some of them not so well, but that's YouTube for you, which is a whole other discussion. But some of the stuff I've created, I'm a big fan. I'm a music background. I really love creating songs. So I've done potty training songs. I've done writing the alphabet in capital letters, the weird wheels on the bus where the repair shop runs out of wheels when the bus wheels go flat, and so it gets replaced with other weird things, all sorts of fun stuff. And then I write and teach and consult around AI a lot. And so I do a lot of writing around AI literacy, like everyone poops except Claude, which is about anthropomorphization and AI. I talk a lot about how I use AI to create and really trying to help folks understand. Talk about how to talk with kids about AI, and also really about the brain rot and the slop that we are seeing across the channels, which is why we're all here today. The tools I use, because I get this question all the time. Claude, Gemini are my main LLMs. I prefer Claude most. That's probably 75% of my work is with Claude in terms of like prompting and writing. For images, I love Nano Banana Pro, through Flow, Midjourney. Audio, I use Suno for music and 11 Labs for voiceover, although increasingly starting to use Google's text-to-speech as well. For video, via or Omni via Flow. I like Runway Cling. I experiment with all of the things. For editing, I do DaVinci Resolve. I also, with code-based editing, will use Remotion and Hyperframes, which probably should be a workshop in and of itself because it's a fascinating space to play with. And then for coding, I use Claude Code, sometimes Gemini, usually in VS Code or Terminal, but sometimes I'm using the Claude Code desktop app. So it kind of varies depending on where I'm at and what's interesting at the time. All of this, my primary computer is a Mac Studio M4 Max with 48 gigabytes of memory. That means I can run some models locally. I cannot do image generation or video generation locally. I did that once. It took, I think, 4 hours to do a 3-second video clip that might as well have been drawn by my dog. It was pretty bad. So I really do need the cloud models for most stuff. And my monthly AI services bill is around $500 a month. Another question I get a lot. So that's a whole lot about me and basics. I love this quote. I use this in every single talk around AI that I do now because it is so important to ground in this idea of intent. So Melvin Kranzberg, first law of technology is that technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. Technology is a tool that amplifies our intent. And so if you want to use it for bad or for weird things or for slop, you can absolutely do that. If you want to use it for good things, you can absolutely do that too. And we're in this really challenging time around AI where I think all of us are kind of grappling with what is the intent, as well as what is the intent behind the companies that have created these tools. So it's a tricky, difficult time, but I really find coming back to this quote is really important for us as creators to ground us in that space. Now that talk about bad intent, there's a lot of slop out there. This is just a handful of images from things that I have found. There's a lot of this word salad stuff where, this is an alphabet train ride, learned ABCs song, and it is just riddled with insane word salad where the AI has just jammed things together to make it look like an alphabet or look like words on the side of a train, but it's nonsensical and it wastes cognitive space for kids. Another one of my worst favorites, I guess, is the ABCs at breakfast, where this is about a baby eating breakfast. It really has nothing to do with the alphabet once you actually get into it. But there are moments like this where the baby takes a bite of an apple and red bloody ooze comes out of its mouth, right? Just not the things we want showing to kids. There's all sorts of IP mashups happening. So this is one with Jesus and My Little Pony that is not authorized either by the My Little Pony IP owners or probably by Jesus as well, whoever manages his IP and social media rights. And then there's these dangerous imitable behavior ones. So this is from a video that is J is for jelly. It's an alphabet video. And she is pulling a banknote out of jelly with her teeth. And if you look really closely, you can see there's actually coins embedded in the jelly as well. And this is photorealistic. So it implies even a further sense of authority that kids are learning or all of us are learning. So this stuff is really dangerous, right? And then you get these channels like JoJo Funland, which is not up anymore, but there are plenty of these that are posting a video every 30 minutes. And so in 5 months, they posted 8,000 videos. And that is because of AI. Right, so we go back to this idea of like, what is your intent? If your intent is to like just like spam the world with really terrible things, AI can help you do that. If your goal is to do good stuff and help facilitate making content faster and better and good for kids, you can also do that. And part of why we're in this situation is because of creators like this who are posting videos that are teaching you how to make faceless AI channels that actually make money. And often it's with a promise of from a single prompt. And it's with these promises of making $900 a day or $10,000 a month. And YouTube is just filled with these around the kids space, around sleep videos, around history videos, around these advice videos. But fundamentally, when it comes back to, if you think about it, one, single prompts just don't work. Not yet. Maybe they will someday, but they don't right now. But also, like, if these creators had actually cracked the code for making $900 a day, they are not going to be sharing those secrets with you. They're going to be off making all the channels they can to generate $900 a day and banking all of that money, not teaching you. So there's a lot of just this bad information out there, which is why I do what I do. And so the biggest thing, and I did a presentation on this yesterday that the workshop's available, and I can send out to everyone on this list around creator responsibility, where we dove more deeply into these are the 5 things I think about a lot as an AI creator. So this idea of being responsible, that you are the human responsible for everything that is going out in the world. Restraint, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So just because you can post a video every 30 minutes does not mean that is in the best interest of the audience, of your business, all of those things. Intent, understanding what the limits are of the AI, what your own limits are, and how you work with those to make good quality content. Transparency of talking about, hey, I'm using AI to do these things, I think is really critical right now, especially while we're in this world of, people have very mixed feelings about it. And so giving families the choice and create an educate or any audience the choice of whether they want to engage with your content. And then privacy, making sure we're not uploading kids' photos or kids' names. I've seen so many teachers go into an LLM and they upload their class list and they're like, help me organize this and that. And they're breaking the data rules of their school, they're breaking the trust of the families. I'm seeing businesses do this where they're like, upload a kid's photo and get a personalized image. There's a lot around this that we need to be thinking about. Happy to talk about that always, but not the focus of today. So like I said, there's other work on this that is available, and also, feel free to ping me. So we're going to talk today really about Google Flow. Now, it is one of many animation tools that are out there. This uses Google's models. It is for, you can do image generation, you can do video generation. You can use, they have a bunch of different models available. So on the image side, they have Nano Banana Pro, they have the Nano Banana sort of standard, they have Imagen, all of their image models are available. I tend to use Nano Banana Pro. I have a subscription. These are subscription tools. My subscription has pretty much unlimited Nano Banana Pro generations. And so I'm going to lean into that where I can. I will flip back to the other models just from a like sort of management and time and speed, because some of these do take a little bit longer. I will flip to other models at times. And then from a video perspective, it supports, it uses both the VO model, which has different speed ones. So you can see right now it's set to like a VO 3.1 fast, but there's different speed models that use different amounts of tokens. There's also Omni is now available, which is their newer model, which is more expensive from a tokens usage, but also does a lot more things. And then for video, you can create landscape portrait, you can control, and actually there's a few more options now that you can control sizing, you can control how many it generates, and you can use text to video, frames to video, or ingredients to video, all of which we are going to talk through what those look like and take a look at those things. But this is fundamentally the flow tool. If you are using Gemini LLM, you can fundamentally access these things through the chat and ask it to create these videos. Depending on your subscription model, you may only be able to do 3 video generations in a day, for example. So the flow tool is really more of a dedicated space that's available on most of their plans in some sort of way. And we can always talk through that if that's something that folks have some questions around. So there's a formula for animation prompts that is different from how we prompt LLMs. You may have seen, when you're working with Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, that there's sort of a prompt structure that's recommended right now where you say, like, you are a children's writer, you're a children's lyricist writing an educational song about the alphabet, and then you give it a bunch of like constraints and you give it a guide of what you want, and so you end up with kind of this multi-sentence prompt for Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT or any of these models to generate the text that you need. Animation is different. It's the same in that there's a formula. There is stuff that is needed to tell it to kind of what you want it to do, but it's structured more around the language of film. So in the case of animation prompts, and this is true of Google, this is true of whether you're using Seedream or Kling or any of those other video models, generally this formula is going to work. There may be some nuances across the different models, and you can always search up, most everyone has guides on the best way to use their models, but this fundamental set of information is going to pretty much do you well anywhere you go. So there's the shot type. How is it framed? Is it close in, wide shot, medium, right? There's lots of language here that you can use. The subject, who are we looking at? This often is going to need a description, right? So it might be a fluffy golden retriever. It might be a 7-year-old boy with brown hair and a green shirt. So generally we're going to have some description, and I like to repeat that description, and we'll get into character consistency as well, but I like to repeat that. There's the action. So what is happening? So the boy is bouncing a ball, playing basketball, walking down the road. The setting, where are we? So are we in a park? Are we in an urban setting? Are we in a living room? Are we close in on a couch with plaid fabric? And then the style. So is it CGI? Is it watercolor? Is it 2D animation? And with the style, you can get really specific and you can play with mixing styles. There's a lot you can do there. And I really encourage experimenting there and also getting away from sort of the standard. You see a lot of like 3D CGI, right? Or even people try to do like Pixar like or Coco Melon like, they'll try to reference specific styles. That creates same. That doesn't help your style differentiate. So I really do encourage experimenting and finding your own style here. And I have style lists if people are interested that I can provide of like ways to just even start thinking about that. But this is the basic formula that you're going to want. So I have some examples that I've already run in VO. These were all generated with the Omni model. So not VO, but their more recent Omni model. And you can see the prompt, and then I'll play just so you can see the output of these. And this was text. So all I gave it was that text prompt. It did not have any image references yet. This is just that. So this one is wide drone shot, photorealistic, cinematic lighting, a lone hiker with a bright red backpack walking along a narrow snowy mountain ridge at sunrise. Now notice I did not give this one an audio prompt, but it gave us footsteps, it gave us wind. Sometimes this works in your favor, sometimes it doesn't. And there's a concept of negative prompting, which is not 100%. So you could say no dialogue, no sound effects, no music. Sometimes it'll listen, sometimes it won't. So I've found for a lot of my editing, I have gotten very proficient at pulling out audio, at doing audio separations to isolate voiceover, things like that. Again, these are things you get into as you start playing more and more with it. So this one is medium shot, 2D hand-drawn animation style, pastel colors. A young girl with messy pigtails is eagerly reaching up to pull a book from a tall wooden bookshelf. And this one's interesting because it gives you multiple angles, right? So even though I said medium shot, it made other decisions of what to do in this case. It also kind of copied a style that I would not be comfortable sharing, like posting this style. I think this is too close to Studio Ghibli. And so I would probably continue working with this to try to find some other sort of definitions of what makes it my own versus feeling like it's kind of copying that like category. Sometimes though, you don't need to give the full prompt. And it's kind of fascinating that there are times where if you're just experimenting, you want to see what it's doing. Again, doing it thoughtfully with intent, you can just put in prompts and just see what it gives you. And so in this case, I gave it hamster gives a TED talk.
It is not just a wheel, it is an engine of pure change. We must dream bigger than seeds.
These models are incredible what they can do, right? And again, like the power that you have with this is just fascinating. I don't know what you would actually do with this. I would have a bunch of like, but like from a satire perspective, like there's so many fascinating things, right? So that's hamster gives a TED talk. Slow motion water balloon popping. Right, fascinating. When I first saw this, I was like, God, I don't know if it holds that shape. And then I went back and I was watching other slow motion, like actual like recorded ones. And it's fast because balloons the water holds the shape of the balloon for a split second before it falls, before, sort of the container of the balloon really like it dissipates from that. So how exactly accurate is this? I don't know, but it's like fascinating to watch this. This one, I was like so delighted. So I literally just put in boo as the prompt. I will say this is not a kid-friendly one. There is a jump scare in it. So for anybody who's, it's not super gross, but just calling that out.
Is anyone there?
Right? Like that was just from the prompt boo. Now, part of what's fascinating here is that this is where you can start to see the training at play. This is because these models have consumed every horror movie out there, right? Kind of thing. And the ethics and the like the whole thing around training model is a whole other beast. But this is where you can really start to see the training come into play. You can also start to understand why when you put in a doctor examines a patient, because of the bias inherent in the data sets, that is why it will show you a white male doctor, is because the training data has biases. So same as it will give you this sort of jump scare for the word boo, that is a bias in the system that you also get. You can use it in your favor, but this one was just it just so delighted me. And this is where sometimes it's just fun to like kind of put things in and see what you get. So then I used this one. Let me just check in on questions for a second. Oh yeah, the Steve Jobs turtleneck on the TED one is like amazing. Yeah. And so I generated two and both of them did that. So again, you can see the bias, right? Like there's there's fascinating things going on here when you separate the copyright issues from the whole thing. So I spend my life constantly like alternating between like wow, oh. So yeah. So with this one, it's starting to shift into character consistency. I was like, well, let's take the next step with this boo one. And so I wanted to then create the next step of it, which to me is that the zombie is actually her friend scaring her. And so we have another scene where there's a reveal of the zombie being, kind of laughing that she's run away and then revealing that it's a friend. And so to do this, we needed character references. And so what I did is I went into the first video and I saved out frames of what was happening. And I saved out a frame that I wanted the zombie and I wanted the hallway. Now, this one was interesting because a couple of the generations that I put in these as the references, and then I gave the prompt of what I wanted. And in this case, I was using ingredients to video. So ingredients is where you say, I want these elements in a new situation. And sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, some of the generations gave me still the girl in the image, even though she had run away at the end of the scene, because it doesn't have the context of what happened in the previous video. But with a couple of prompts, especially because I was saying like stands alone in the creepy hallway with torn wallpaper, I was able to get it to a place where it generated what I wanted. The other option would have been to create the starting frame, but we'll come back to that. So this is what it gave me. Now we got the zombie. The reveal of the friend. So you can edit these two together and you have a little like very simple story, right? You have this thing going along. It's where you start to see the character consistency come into play in this. The flow tool has an option where you can add on where you'll be looking at the video and then you'll say, okay, add the next scene, which is this. I've had really mixed responses with it. So I find I need to go back to this structure. But we'll look at this more when we jump into the tool. This is another short little story. So tennis ball rolls on a table, dog comes running, face is broken, and sad dog. So the implication being the dog broke the vase with the tennis ball. I really love trying these little stories because I think this is where one, you can start to experiment for your own storytelling. How well can you tell this story? But also it really requires practice with prompts. And it gets you to this place of starting to understand the arc of things, the audio, all of these different pieces. So this is where I spend a lot of time teaching and experimenting. And this is how like you learn at film school. You do not jump right into making a feature-length film, right? You work on shorts and you work your way up. And so it's a really nice way to practice this. So for this particular prompt, I'm a huge fan of storyboards. Storyboards are a standard animation tool, a standard filmmaking tool. They help you organize your thoughts. They help you organize your prompts. It helps you check the flow of the story. It keeps you honest. It helps you understand how long is your story, helps you understand the different shots you need to make. So this is one example. There are so many different ways that you can do storyboards. When I do songs, this is kind of the structure I use where I have the lyrics, or if it's a musical beat, I have the prompt that I'm using and I have the starting frame. Because I usually find I need a starting frame and I will separately have a character asset and reference sheet going on. But I generally need this. And so I build this out because I also need to sometimes test if shots are actually possible to match what's in the lyrics to happen for what's needed. So I really find storyboards are a good way of organizing my thoughts. For these little stories, it could look something just like this, where again, you're starting to generate these starting frames. And you're just getting a short description of what is happening. It could also look like this, where it's just the starting images and you can pretty much figure out in a short story like what's going on here. So a lot of different ways to do this. So in this case, this is a wall of text. I'm going to talk you through what happened here, and then this is what we're going to go play with in VO in a moment. Flow has an agent option now. where you can chat with the Gemini model and it will interact and pull and generate the videos for you. It is hit or miss. It works somewhat for these short stories. I'm finding you have to do it in kind of chunks though. But what I gave it was this prompt over here on the left. I want to create a very short, emotional, nonverbal story. Here's the 4 beats of the story. Decorative vase with the tennis ball. Oh, I have a numbering issue going on here. A bouncy, adorable Great Pyrenees, and then the dog sits with the tennis ball. So it took this beautiful, touching concept. You can start to see what Gemini was responding to with the good old sycophancy of like, great job, Carla, you made a lovely story here. But then it built out the storyboard for me, and you can just see some parts of the storyboard. So it created the characters. So Mochi, incidentally, both Gemini and Claude, when I asked for storyboards, named the dog Mochi. So again, training data. Somewhere there's a Mochi popular dog name. The parlor, the props, the base, the vase, the ball, wardrobe. I don't know that we really need the leather collar, but you know, you got it. The environment. And then it storyboarded out the frames. And in this case, it ended up creating the 4 frames. So the ball under the table, the dog running, the broken vase, and then the close in on the dog crying kind of thing. So it's really interesting when you start to see like you can work with these tools directly in Flow to generate the videos. Now there's still some limitations. It can only create 10 seconds at a time. And so in this case, that story fits in 10 seconds. But if you need it to be longer, then you're going to be working with chunks of video that they're going to then have to edit. Vibe coding and agents are a whole beast of like hallucinating things. And so sometimes it would tell me it had made a storyboard for me to go review, like a physical file. Now, the thing about Gemini in Flow is that it is not connected to your Google Documents or anything. It is not the same as working in Gemini in the app or in like Terminal or something where it has the ability to create. So it would say it created a storyboard, but there is no mechanism for it to save a storyboard. And I literally had the good old arguments with it where I'm like, there is no storyboard. And it's like, no, yes, there's a storyboard here. And then I was like, no, I literally can't find the storyboard. And then I'll be like, let me recreate it. Here's the storyboard for you. And there was nothing. And this was the arguments that I had with it. So right, there's a limit to what you can do. These are only going to get better and stronger, but there's a limit right now. And then the other thing was that editing was very hit or miss. So in that video at the beginning, there's sort of a weird dust trail coming off the tennis ball. And I wanted to try to remove that. Now, the promise of Omni and this is that you can literally edit in that way and say, keep everything the same, but change, remove the dust. It doesn't work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So it's worth a try. But sometimes these tools are really great. They're like, great, I fixed the dust. I also made the dog into a golden retriever. Like it'll do like things that you're like, no, I just needed this. And it's like, look how helpful I am. I like made all these other changes for you. So know that like there's some limitations here, but still fascinating. And that is where tomorrow's workshop and also the vibe coding tools that are available in Flow are starting to be really interesting to me, because then you can actually create tools that work to your needs. And so I have built storyboard tools, like you can see a photorealistic version of this that actually goes from script to building out the assets to building out the storyboard to animating, and it does it in this whole chunked format that then I can get what I need, and it does the references. And so it's slightly longer process. It's not as nice as the one-shot prompt kind of promise, but the one-shot prompts don't generally work, but these tools can. So tomorrow I'll be diving more into these tools. And this is also when I do the class, all of those things, I will be diving more into those things. So all of this, zombies are obviously not super kid friendly unless you're making an adorable one. But when you come back to the idea of how do you make it kid friendly, is really remembering who you're designing for and knowing AI limitations, right? So I mentioned if you say a doctor, you're going to get a white male because of the bias in the training data in the sets, because it is based on what humans have done and humans have biases. If you ask for lyrics for an educational song without a framework around it, and I talked about this yesterday too in the guidelines, you're going to get things that look okay, but as you dig into them deeper, like if you look in verse 3, there's Q is for a box of rocks. That is not what Q is for. There is X is for the fox, the X hides inside, and the more you pull this apart, the more it breaks apart. So you have to really be thoughtful and responsible as you are using these tools, which means, AI content, you cannot be creating word salad. Letters and numbers have to be correct, or they need to be little scribbles where it's the implication, but it's not going to cognitively encode the wrong information. No dangerous imitable behaviors. What's happening on screen and voiceover and lyrics should all match. So if you say 3 frogs, there should be 3 frogs. This is one of the biggest things that gets broken so much in educational content, in the slop content. Should be age appropriate pacing and sensory limits. It should be educationally sound and factually correct. You'd think we wouldn't have to say this, but yes, we have to say this, right? Bleeding baby. Consistent and correct characters, props, locations. That consistency really matters. That the real world logic holds up unless it's obviously fantasy. So if you drop a ball and it should bounce, right? Unless it's like you've set up that it's some magical weird ball with wings on it and then it can go flutter around or something. No scary, startling, or nightmare triggering imagery for whatever age band you're working for. One of my other favorite slop examples is the dinosaur at the window video, which is now down, but got 31 million views in 3 weeks. And it was a cute little nursery rhyme about a dinosaur, except the visuals were dinosaurs skinned with like Joker or Captain America chasing a baby down a hallway. Very like weird and scary and gross and IP hacking. Not appropriate, but very like shocking. And then it should be kind pro-social modeling, right? So all of these like good things. And we could go on, right? This is part of why I'm teaching the course, is because a lot of this starts to be, how do you just create good kids content, regardless of whatever tool you're using? These are all true, whether you are, drawing it by hand or creating. One of the ways I like to think about this, though, is to think about what kind of creator you are, because slop is different from silly, right? Like there is reality television and there is like award-winning documentaries, right? There is a range of content and everybody's gonna have different feels. Same as there's a range of restaurants. There are your fast food restaurants to your Michelin star. It does not necessarily mean that there is something wrong, that each one has its place. Again, there's a lot of conversation we could have around this. Each one has its place. And for you as a creator to decide where you are in the spectrum is going to inform how hard you push into all of these limits of things. There's some basics like dangerous imitable behaviors, definitely should not do. If your positioning is educational, should not have word salad on screen. But understanding where you are as a creator is also going to help inform how you approach AI as a content creator. Fundamentally, though, it comes back to you are responsible for the output. So if you are making a cat, make it a cat, a proper cat with 4 legs, not with 6 legs, right? Or 8 legs in this case. You are responsible for that output. All right, I'm going to flip over to Flow, but just 2 things. So tomorrow is the Personalize Your AI Animation Tools with Google Flow workshop at 9:30 Pacific. On Monday, I'm starting teaching, I think it's a 5-week course for making AI videos with kids. So we will go deep onto all of this, break it down. You can use the code FunkyFrogs for 15% off. That's starting on Monday. If you want to reach out to me, or if you want to see more of my writing, LinkedIn or Substack are all good ways to reach out to me. And I'm going to stop sharing and flip over to, let me check if there are any questions here. Okay, cool. Yes, let me answer the question. So yes, I noticed all the clips shown are very short. Is that the default length that the AI generates? Could the AI be told to make a 5-minute video? So yes and no. These tools at this level have defaults of, I think like Flow does 4, 6, 8, and 10 seconds, and you can choose which length you want. You can use other tools to then tell it to generate all of these videos in these increments and then edit them together. That's where some of the code-based editing comes into play that I've worked with. But generally you are working in short chunks, is going to be. And so, and even often you need to think about like, if you want this angle and then you want this angle, you have to do those as 2. Sometimes you can get both into 1, but it's hit or miss. So, yep. All right. And what types of skills are almost necessary to do this well? So example, you mentioned starting small clips, learning about storyboards, anything else that are table stakes. Yeah. So it's a great question. In terms of table stakes, I think one is really knowing what you don't know. And so if you are diving into making a preschool literacy show, or actually let me use the potty training video that I did. I made this potty training song, and I knew going into it, it's been a while. I have a teenager. It's been a while since I've been around potty training. And so I didn't know what the current sort of languages around it or best practices. And so I had to do some research to make sure I was appropriately communicating what needed to happen there. So that's one. It's just kind of, I needed to know that that's what I don't know. And so if I'm promising to do something, especially when you get into education, that matters. As you get into storytelling, storytelling is an interesting one because there's so many different kinds of storytelling and there's structures and everything, but it's kind of that same principle of knowing what you don't know. There's lots of things you can search. You know, people love reading children's books. There are structures to children's books. And so knowing if you're going to write a children's story, there are structures out there to go play with. You can break those structures, but you should understand what those structures are first. Or if you're memoir writing, there are structures to memoirs, and there are memoirs that break those structures. But again, you need to know those structures first. So there's a lot of like kind of understanding what you don't potentially know that I think matters. From there, I think all of this is a learning process and experimenting and just starting to play with it, and then getting feedback is really critical, especially when you're working in a space that's new. But from a standpoint, part of why like there's the slop explosion is because the barrier to entry has been lowered so much. So it's so easy to create that it kind of feels like, oh, it doesn't matter what I don't know. Whereas it used to be at least like if you wanted to create something, you had to understand some of these basics of production and everything. It's funny, I was talking to somebody yesterday. We were talking about how uh, this feels a little bit like when mobile apps really first started to come out, where there was just all sorts of apps being created, except there was still a pretty solid barrier to entry that you had to know how to code. You had to like pay for, sort of access to be able to release these apps and everything. So there was still a like cost to creating, whereas now it's just like bloop, bloop, bloop. So that puts us in sort of this weird place. But yeah, love that question. So let me share now, and we'll go into Google Flow if it loads. Should be loading. Okay, and now as I had mentioned, if you have anything you want to like, you're like, what happens when you try to make, I don't know, pig flying? Happy to try those things. But what I wanted to show you, I have a couple of these like nonverbal short prompts, kind of like what I did with the other one, and I want to run it through the agent flow just to show you again what this potentially looks like. So we have the guilty cat, the melting cone, the balloon, the old dog's toy, the snowman, the lost man. Anybody have any feelings of which one they want to try? I have no idea how any of these are going to work out. Let's see what we got. Robots. All right, let's do a robot. Where's the robot? Robot and the spider. Okay. This is literally all I am going to paste into this. And so where's my, oh, it's over here. And I have too many things on my screen. Okay, so I'm already in the agent mode. And I'm just going to give it this, and we'll see what it does. This is the downside of where we now need like hold music or a little dance. I should have saved the questions to answer after I had started doing this. Lesson learned. I'll do the YouTube default of sip coffee. Have you ever noticed all the creators who do that when they're waiting, they're like, and coffee. I guess it's a good opportunity to like have some branding here too. So let's see what it's got. It's got a storyboard and plan. Oh, I think we're gonna, let's see. We might hit the what I mentioned of it says it gives us to us, but it doesn't. We'll see what happens. And then I'm gonna meanwhile start prepping also. Let's see what we get. I also just asked, I use Claude to write out my animation prompts a lot. So I've created a skill that has sort of knows what I need and want. Doesn't mean it always listens to me, but for the most part it does. So I just asked it to create animation prompts for these 4 as well. Oh, it has taken a while here. All right, while we're doing that, I'm going to open another window. New project. So normally when you come into Flow, it's going to look like this. And I just turned the agent off. And so this is going to give you, if you're creating an image, here's your size options that you can create, and here's your models that you can create. All right, and we'll just say a 2D cartoon robot. We'll see what it gives us for that. And then if you want to create a video, right? So you have frames and ingredients options. So if you have frames, you have the starting frame. And again, same, and your models that you can work with. Let's see what our agent is doing here. Storyboard. All right, we have Motto, a small disc-shaped cleaning robot with a matte pearl white finish. Pip, a tiny translucent amber spider with bio. Ooh, this is gonna be complicated. Sometimes it gets too fancy for its own good. Motto rests on the charging dock. Pip lowers itself. Motto's light blinks blue as it rotates. Motto sits still while Pip weaves. Great. Okay. Please make the storyboard. All right. And usually it's going to ask for permission because it is spending credits. You can turn on a mode. All right. So it's making that. Let me go back over here. So here's our robot that it created for us. So if we wanted to reuse this but change it in space, we could do that. If we wanted to add it to prompt and we want to have the same robot in his bedroom, let's do that. So then we're going to keep the character. We should keep the character, but now we're going to see him in his bedroom. Or if we wanted to, so see, okay, this is fun. So this one, the prompt was only a 2D cartoon robot in space. So see, we did not keep, so it just used the same concept. It also gave us anthropomorphic rocks. So if I wanted to edit this, remove the faces on the rocks. This is where Nano Banana is really nice because now it's going to modify this image to remove it. We'll come back to that in a second. So here we've got same robot, right? So this robot in his robot bedroom or this robot bedroom. Let's look at this one. So we've got actually correct text back here, famous robots. I don't like the floating gears. That's kind of weird. So we'll use this one. So that's our guy. So that's how you can start to play with consistent characters. Can also do add to prompt, create a character reference sheet for this robot on a white background. I like doing this, so I'll start to use, if I have an established character, I will create a character reference sheet that I will use as the same reference point all the time. All right, so now we'll do, what do we want the robot to do in his bedroom? Let's see. I will come back to the questions in a minute. Okay, so here we've got like the reference sheet. And then we've got our We've got him in the bedroom. So if we wanted to, let's animate. And so we're going to say wide shot of the, oops, of the robot in his bedroom. He walks to his bed and lays down to go to sleep. Gentle boops and bleeps of robot noises. Yeah, that should be. It's not, it doesn't have quite everything, but it's got a lot of the setting stuff. So let's go back and see. Here's our storyboard. It gave us a, I would call this photorealistic. Did we give it a style? Trying to see. Yeah, we did ask for 3D CGI. Unfortunately, side note, one of the things I find with doing AI animation is there's a lot of like fractured attention and jumping around because you're waiting for things to happen. And so that's what's happening right now is I'm like, well, while we're waiting for this to happen, let's jump over and do this other thing. It's not for everyone. And I recognize that it is very much how I've kind of fallen into working. So um that's fine, but I want it to be more 3D CGI. This looks too photorealistic. Okay, so let's see if it fixes that. Now, meanwhile, we have our animations of the robot. So we had some issues there. Let's see what this one gives us. This is the other one. This is why I like doing two at a time. Nope. It does not like that one. So this is where you have a couple of options. You could keep hammering at it and see if you can get it. You could try, so let's see if we get a, so one of the things sometimes is now we've got a clip here. So if you go to this, you get to save the frame out. And then you could use that as a starting frame, see if we can get it closer. Or you go back to this image and we add it to the, oops, I need that image. Oh, that's a video. That's why that's not working. Sorry. This is the part of demos that is really hard with this stuff. So add to prompt, take that one off. The robot is sleeping in his bed under the covers. The robot sleeping. So now I'm making another image that I'll use as the starting frame, and we would essentially splice these two together. So him walking to the bed and then him sleeping in the bed. And I mean, and filmmakers have been doing this right for as long as film has existed, is how do you hide the seams? So if there's something hard, you have to be clever about how do you manage it. This starts to get into sort of advanced versions of filmmaking, and where the nuances start to come into play. So funny. So see, this time it gave us, he's still in there. Let's see if it got this one right. Nope. So let's take this one. Remove the robot from the center of the, so we remove him. All right, back to our 3D CGI one. That feels a little better. I'm not sure about the blue color change, but we can see what it does with it. So you can start to see where one prompt stuff is just struggling here. Would you like me to kick off this one video? Oh, and here it tells you it's going to be 15 credits to do this one. Approve. So it's generating that. There was the question, I'll come back to that in a second. Okay, so now we've got no robot in the bedroom, robot in the bed. So we can do a animation. Now I'm using the starting frame. So see a starting frame, there's a start, you can put an end frame. If it made it ingredients, the end frame goes away. So that's how you know the different modes. And we're going to do the zoom in on the robot's face as he peacefully sleeps. So here I'm using very short prompts. but these can be the full length, and I would probably do the full length ones in most situations. So that one cost, let me put this back just to answer the cost question. It's not gonna, where's the video one? There we go. So usually you can see, so see down here, it says generating will cost 20 credits using VO Fast. If I go to Omni Flash, it's going to use 24 credits for 2. If I change it to 1, it'll use 12 credits. So it does tell you down here what you're using. So now, okay, you ready for the world premiere of the robot and the spider? Oh, we were so close until it had a baby spider. So here's now what we can do is we can give it that feedback. In the last shot, the spider, a second spider appears. I only want the one spider. Remove the second smaller one. Okay, so I'm telling it in the last shot, a second spider appears. I only want the one spider. Remove the second one. There's no right way to prompt when you're into this stuff so far that I found. You just try it and you see what happens. So that's the other funny thing about AI. You know, the definition of like insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. There's sort of that running meme about that. Except in AI, where if you do the same thing over and over again, you often will get a different result at some point. So you have to kind of decide your own tolerance for spending credits, and trying the same thing. So I've sort of found over time, if I feel pretty good about the prompt, and that's where you'll learn what prompts work and don't work, I will try it again first before I modify the prompt or add images. But if after like a second try it's still not working, then I will go ahead and do that. So interesting, it modified the storyboard grid, even though the storyboard did not actually have a second spider. But if that's what it needs to do, okay, please animate. So we'll ask it to animate. Now going back, we've got our robot sleeping in bed, and we zoom in and we have robot snoring noises and his face or his little bonus thing turned into a plug. Let's check the other one. Right, so we got the smiley face up here. That one maintained. I like this one much better. So see, that's what you can see. Doing 2 is just helpful. So you could now, let's see if this works. And then I will answer any other questions. We will check where was the one where he was walking? See why you need a storyboard too? All right, so we're gonna add that one to the scene. We're gonna make a scene. There's another tool that's in here. And then we're also going to add this to the scene. I don't use the scene tools a lot. I would rather edit by hand because I have generally found it does not work that well. So here's our scene though. It has the 2 videos. So we could do, right, he gets over to here. We're going to crop that. See, and the problem is you can't add transitions, so you can't add a nice crossfade to him. But, you know, we have the whole video in some, but the audio is not going to match. Right, so you get a lot of issues. That's why I don't like using this, but you can see what's there. All right, what do we have? Oh shoot, it's got to approve. There we go. All right, we're closing in while we wait for that to generate. Are there any other questions? Do I envision AI video gen tools becoming deprecated, limited when AI labs discover the model may be cost prohibitive? So for context, OpenAI shut down Sora, and it was fundamentally they couldn't compete. It was too expensive to generate the videos. It wasn't getting used enough they weren't competing with the VOs and the Seed Dreams and the Klings out there. So one, there was a business decision made. Two, it really starts to emphasize video generation is expensive. And this goes back to the intent stuff. Like you really do need to be thoughtful. Another thing, incidentally, like those videos that I was showing you of like the $900 a day, if you run that, the prompt, the way that she talks about, it actually costs you about $80 to $85 to generate that video. And you're spending that to generate slop. So these are expensive models. I think my suspicion of what's going to happen is one is the companies are going to course correct the costs. We are already seeing this start to happen with the frontier models. They are, essentially the VCs have been funding all of our experiments. We're starting to see costs correct. So I think it will course correct. We will start to probably take more of the hit on that. At the same time, there's the good old technology gets more the compute costs will get better. And so at some point it will probably balance out and there will be a normal state of like what it costs, that will transition over time, but I think it will settle. It's going to be more expensive than it is right now. I don't think it'll be cost prohibitive. And I think there's enough here from a business use case, enough interest and enough like studios kind of experimenting that they'll figure it out. That's my guess. I may be totally wrong, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. All right, let's watch the one more go of what it did to fix this. Change locations. All right, not too bad, right? So again, would I release that? Probably not. As an exercise to learn prompting, to learn to evaluate what is happening, to learn to really evaluate like, oh, the scene changed. So I want to make sure I'm keeping the background solid. And how do I do that with starting frames? Or did the spider change a little bit? No, the spider's pretty good. The size reference might have changed, right? There's a lot of stuff you could get into here. I don't love the dust motes. Those drive me crazy. So, that is VO or an Omni and Flow in a nutshell. Oh, and I just saw there was another question. Did table stakes know how to write a skill? Yes and no. There's a lot of good information out there about how to write them. The art and the nuance is in getting it to do what you really want it to do, which means sometimes knowledge bases, all of those things. So you can get them up and running very easily. Tuning them to do what you want them to do can take some work. So cool. Thank you all for being here. And I hope to see you around and feel free to ping me. Cool. Bye.